Hello and welcome to another episode of the Plus 63 HP podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sean Clemente. Alongside with me is my bestest best friend, CHUBAX. How you doing?
Hello, hello. Doing
All
good.
right. Uh, we are here to discuss another one of our reviews movies. If this is your first time here, again, Plus 63 HP is a stable of podcasts where we have one review show where we discuss and deep dive into a show or movie per week. We also have our Reacts show where we react to a curated list of trailers, clips, featurettes, and see which type of content we're going to be hyped on. We also have a weekly D&D podcast where we record our very first D&D campaign as middle-aged old men and a lady. That has been running for 2 years. It's all super fun. So if you want to join that adventure, we also have one of those shows. So again, we have multiple different shows dropping multiple different times per week. Hope you like and subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and let us know what you think. Just hang out with us when we discuss cool stuff like this particular episode. This one we will be telling you how much we like and or not like the latest uh foray into the Alien franchise, Alien Romulus. Before I dive into I'll dive into stats first, and then we'll do first impressions, non-spoilery, and then we'll deep dive into the plot and give you our thoughts, our actual rating for said movie. But um just for stats, Alien Romulus was released in August 16th, 2004. This movie is placed in between Alien 1 and Aliens, basically Alien 2. So if you were going to watch the franchise, you start with Prometheus, then you watch Covenant, then you watch Alien, then you watch this Romulus, and then you watch Aliens, Aliens 3, and then Alien Resurrection. All right. So that is the chronological setup of the Alien franchise. We're not including Aliens versus Predators. They had two of those movies. Those are technically non-canon because Prometheus and Covenant kind of reestablish the timeline on when the xenomorphs come. It's directed by Federico Alvarez. For those who have not seen any of those of his former movies, he's the director of Evil Dead, which is um, one of the movies that we enjoyed watching. He is also the director of Don't Breathe. Don't Breathe is the movie
Mm.
where some kids break into or try to steal something from a blind guy and they got trapped. That's pretty cool. Don't Breathe 2 as well, which is either I'm not sure if it's
I
sequel or
haven't
prequel
seen it. It is a
to
sequel.
Breathe. Yeah, it is a sequel, but
They
uh,
tried to make the blind guy kind of good.
kind of good. So protecting another kid. There's also the girl in the spider web, but also Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So all in all, if you really look at Fed Alvarez's um uh uh roster or filmography, he is an expert in building up suspense, making suspense thrillers and horror movies at the fairly decent budget. So that's always good when you're kind of like, putting a new word director to take the helm of a franchise. And he's a big fan of Aliens. Has been all of his ideas has been vetted and coordinated with Ridley Scott and who's the other one? James Cameron, just to make sure that all of the things that he does is within the universe. Couple of notable stars in the movie is Kaylee Spenny, as Chubax mentioned, starred in Priscilla, but she is for me most known for one of my most memorable movies the past couple of years is Civil War. She was Jessie there. She was the kid that was running with the oldies. Um, He's also in the movie Craft the Legacy. I did not realize that, and on the basis of sex. Um, I think one of the most early films that we've seen her is Pacific Rim Uprising too. So,
Yes,
um,
which we recently watched also.
and it's also that's pretty good. So Kayla Spenny is super cute. She's on the up and up. There's David Johnson, Archie Renault, some British actors. None of particular note when I checked their discovery. But there's Isabella Merced, Dora
Yes,
herself, is also in the film, kind of like not a lot of screen time, but very important role. I was talking with CHUBAX before for the Filipinos out there. Uh, Isabella Merced had longer, curlier hair in this movie, and she was a fucking splitting image of Lottie B, that influencer person that does a lot of comedy Instagram reels. So that's her. And then we have Spike Fern and Eileen Wu playing fuck, I forgot. Navarro, the the pilot. Um just a breakdown of the characters, Kaylee is Rain. She is essentially kind of like the main protagonist here, but I like the fact that it revolves around Kaylee and David Johnson playing Andy the android. It's a reprogrammed android to act as Rain's brother slash surrogate father because Rain's dad died. They needed David as an android to gain access to the Romulus and Remus, a little um, outpost that is slowly drifting into the rings of this planet that they are in. They were gonna go there, or the plan of Archie, Isabella, Spike, and Eileen, this ragtag group of kids coming from this derelict planet that never sees the sun. Their plan was to go to this outship, get some cryo fuel so that they can last the 9-year journey to go to a place called LV-410. Nice. Just that overall, great. I love that. Um, but those
nothing
are the
too
stars.
crazy.
It has a runtime of 119 minutes, so 2 hours, exactly 2 hours. I think that is a perfect length for this type of movie. Good pacing. As of recording, the movie has made $234 million, which is kind of great. Chubax, what do you think the budget was for this movie?
Uh, did it hit 100?
Not even.
Damn,
That's why I'm
see?
very impressed.
That's what I'm talking about. What is it? 50?
80.
Okay,
So
80. Still.
80. Yeah.
And with the
Okay.
amount of practical effects.
A lot of practical effects, and we'll talk about like the end note as well on how they did that. Um, but yeah, a lot of practical effects, very little CGI. They were very, very um deliberate in the sets that they built. So it's both wildly different from each other, but also you don't mind being there for a little bit longer than what you're supposed to. Because if you really think about it, there was only like 4 or 5 scenes, right? That there's like the inside of their ship, there's the lab in Romulus, there is a couple of other rooms in Romulus, and that's pretty much it. So that's kind of nice. But before we dive into details of the movie, what is your non-spoiler review for Alien Romulus?
Me, I loved it. It's one of my favorite movies this year. I don't know. Maybe I just put my mindset into loving it before because I was biased. Because I've always wanted aliens to go back to this one, to the roots,
Mhm.
and thankfully it gave me everything I wanted. So I mean, great. The cast was even better than I thought. The runaway was it David? What's his name?
Right?
The
Oh,
android. What's his
yeah,
name?
David Johnson, yeah. Andy.
Andy. Yeah, he was the surprise, and
Wow.
I to be honest, I even blanked out. Like, of course there was gonna be a android in here, but it didn't cross my mind that from the chiller one of them was an android.
Mm.
So it was a surprise when it started the movie. Oh, of course there is. So yeah, I mean, I loved it. Of course it's not the great. There's still some issues here and there, but I mean, from what I wanted and from the budget, I'm happy that it is what it is, and I hope they do more. I want to see more. I want to see
Mm-hmm.
Andy and Rain again. I want to see this world again.
LV410.
Maybe they
I'm
go. They remade the first one. I mean, this is like a requel in a sense, right?
a
It's
Rico,
like
a
a
Rico,
requel
yeah.
of the first one. So maybe next we
Mhm.
get aliens in a sense with them back. I mean, I saw a tweet. I don't know if it's correct, but like Sigourney Weaver said she's ready to come
She's
back.
back. She,
So we don't know. Yeah,
for the right script, yeah.
and I
No,
hope Fede stays as the same guy, and I hope they stay practical.
I 100% with you. Like I didn't know a lot about Alien Romulus when it was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that they, made the press release that it'll be back to form, et cetera, et cetera. Because again, rewatching Covenant and Prometheus, I, and prior to Romulus coming out, a lot, we a lot of people are doing re-reviews explaining where the xenomorphs came, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's this dichotomy of how people look at the prequels, because now that I when it came out, it wasn't um blockbuster success as most people would have expected it to be, given that you had Fassbender, Charlize Theron.
Mm.
That was the height of Numi Rapace.
And
So
they also didn't say that it was an aliens movie.
well, they kind of did, but I mean, they did not use the word aliens because again, they didn't want to concentrate on that, right? So,
Yeah.
but also back in the day, they were very, very fixated about Ridley Scott's fascination about God and Creator, and then that this is kind of his like his love late letter to where what creation is and where creation come from. So it was rough when it came out, but of course, years later, I also rewatched it. It's really good.
Prometheus.
I really, yeah, Prometheus and Covenant.
Yeah.
There
Oh,
are
yeah.
there are gaps of information though that sucks. Like particularly in Covenant, they skip the entire thing that what had happened, right? And then you really can't watch Covenant without watching Prometheus too. So that's one. But when Alien Romulus came out, even I was thinking like, is there going to be, is this one of those movies that will attempt to clear
Correct.
all the threats from all of everything? So that was kind of, and I was actually looking forward to it because like I want to learn a little bit more. I'm still confused how xenomorphs came to be, right? What's the role of the engineers, etc., etc. But as the movie came out and as I saw it like day of to get our face hugger buckets, it was just, hey, self-contained movie, which is great. You really don't need to watch any other aliens movie to watch
Mm-hmm.
this, which is also number two. The premise of it is fresh and new and understandable. Like I said, we want to go to a different planet. We can't go because our ship only has, maximum of 3 years cryo. It's a 9-year trip. There is an outpost that is derelict, that is about to be destroyed. We could go there, steal some shit, and then go about our merry way. We can't get into that ship without this android. That's why we're bringing this person.
Yep.
Right? So everything made sense. Everything was simple, everything was clear, everything made sense. And then, of course, that's beyond talking about the pacing and the way that they showed the face huggers mutating into the tiny aliens to the big xenomorph multiplying to multiple xenomorph, cocooning and stuff like that. So the way that Fed Alvarez showed all of those things were practical enough to make it look realistic. It doesn't look dumb.
Mm-hmm.
um but also made sense because like we've seen this a bajillion times already. What's going to be different in seeing another face hugger run around in a particular place? You put a little bit of water on it, trap it in a room, etc. Fight against it. So that was super fun. So I really enjoyed this too, considering that I went to I needed to go to an IMAX theater to get our popcorn buckets, right? And I went to like one of the farthest ones to watch, but I really really enjoyed it. And even the drive back was super duper fun. Um, all right, we're gonna go through the plot. Chabox is gonna jump in. Whatever thoughts that he has in that particular spot, but we'll do it into chunks. So the first chunk is um showing the wreckage of um uh
Nostromo.
start of the yeah, and this the Nostromo is the wreckage of the Nostromo is that is the ship of Alien, the first one. That's
Mhm.
Ripley's ship, right?
I love this one. Like, I'll jump in again. There's a lot of tweets where some of people were annoyed with the amount of Easter eggs and homages, but for me,
You don't need it.
it was so well done that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's like it's fan service in a sense, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't.
It's also It's
Yeah.
also just good exposition. If you don't know that it's
It
an Easter eggs, it's just good exposition.
doesn't take anything away.
Mm. So essentially, there's a probe that investigates the wreckage of the Nostromo, uh, and then they saw a few cocooning xenomorphs. Cool start of the movie, um, and then you jump out to months later. Um, There's a colony on a place called Jackson Star on a planet called LV-410, where Rain and her adopted android brother
Mhm.
Andy are just like working. They're working off. There's like a time that they need to work off from, and then their Rain's time increased because she's also working off her father slash parents quote unquote
Well,
debt.
technically, they just fucked her. This,
Yeah,
I saw like one of the articles about Alien where it's like the real villain is Swale and Yutani in the
100%.
company because they're like really just fucking milking them like slaves.
And I think that's a constant now that I've rewatched all the aliens apart from 3 and 4. So Prometheus, Covenant, Alien, Romulus,
Aliens.
Aliens. I've seen all of those. You really see that up front is Will and Yutani is the big bad. Like they're the ones that are taking advantage of these. These are the ones that are taking advantage of evolution, understanding what creation is to make a profit of it. But uh, the idea about it is like so. Rain's ex-boyfriend persuades her to join their ragtag of crew to retrieve like fuel or cryostasis chambers from this um floating space station, the Romulus and Remus. So there are two space stations combined together, et cetera, et cetera. So the people that are included in the group is Rain's ex-boyfriend Tyler, Andy to open the doors of Wayland Yutani ships, and then there is Tyler's we didn't know at start, but towards the middle of the movie, Tyler's pregnant sister Kay, who's played by Isabella Merced, and then another person named Bjorn. Um, we don't see this in the movie, but Wiki and interviews of Fed Alvarez after kind of confirms that the father of Case baby is Bjorn.
Their
Right, so
cousin
that's
Bjorn.
why. And then they're also cousins, and but that's fine. And then they also have Bjorn's adopted sister, who is Navarro, like an Asian lady, and she's the pilot um, of the hauler named Corbulin. I should have uh uh so it's named Corbulin, but I was reading through Ricky. Um it was formerly known as a Renaissance, the Renaissance, which might be an Easter egg for some other movie, but maybe like a repurposed from somewhere else. But Um, there you go. So there's a lot of adventures once they one also like just the filming of how they fly through the atmosphere and them, experiencing rain, the turbulations. Like it's not, I know it is sci-fi, but there's still a lot of danger in space travel. And then once they got through, I guess the pollution or the atmosphere of this particular planet, and they finally saw a little bit of the sun. All of them were so ecstatic because that's the one of the
Yeah.
reasons why they wanted to
Such a
escape.
sad realization. They can't even see the sun from the planet they're dying on.
There is zero sun in this planet, and then you're miners too. So it's like that's double the prison. But also the sun gets blocked out by this dangerous ring that is floating across the planet, and where the Romulus and Remus is slowly gravitating towards. Um, okay, to do that, they hook up into Romulus and Remus to retrieve again the cryogenic fuel for the team. Um, Fred used a technique here that James Cameron did in the original movie, where everything that's gonna happen in the movie you're kind of gonna see in the first 5 minutes that you're in the ship. So as soon as they dock into the ship, all of the things that kind of was just exposition about the place is also foreshadowing. Like first, um, it is a derelict ship, so um everything is turned off, but the gravity generator turns on and off at certain times. So that's, dangerous thing. So they needed to get that squared away. They also get into places indoors where you needed extra keys, etc., etc. And then there was also a few instances where Andy was trying to touch certain cables and cords that are being used in their hauler, right? Because they're a hauler ship, they're a mining
Mm.
ship. They haul some metals. That they do so, they have to kind of like go into the cargo bay. Hooking themselves into is going to be important towards the end of the movie. Um, so once they get there,
I also
they
love that, like, Will and Yutani so mischievous and, oh, not mischievous, like, evil, cunning. Like, they don't even need to keep an eye on them because they're not going anywhere. Like, even here in the ship, without the space station, it's not like they can go anywhere.
yep, yep. But that's what you like. It's essentially what we indentured servants that we have, but in a planet level, right? Right
Mhm.
now, it's just like maybe certain cities and towns in different countries, but now it's like this whole planet is just people mining this planet, and those materials are being sent off to other colonies and other worlds that are being built by Whale Yutani. So, on one hand, you say like, oh, we're terraforming planets, or researching how people can live longer, building ships for interplanetary travel, but that requires a lot of resources. Uh, so we're in the ship now, while recovering the cryo fuel. Tyler and Bjorn was the first one that came in with Andy as the ones opening. They realized that the cryo chamber of the ship that they docked into did not have enough fuel. Right. So they saw the cryopods. They could have been cool. They could have taken that and left. And that was the original plan. I love the original plan. It's like, hey, it's 30 minutes in and out. We go there, we get the cryofuel, and we bounce. And that's it. Good plan. Right. But the cryofuel that they saw was only like one third filled. So it would only last them 3 years out of the 9 year trip that they needed to do. But Tyler, having known a little bit about these military or ships, it's like, oh, there's cryofuel in stored somewhere else.
The other
Right.
side.
So that's where all the fun happens. So they went into essentially don't realize that maybe this wasn't a this wasn't a storage room or a fuel room, but they went into a lab where that's where they saw some additional cryo fuel. and then they tinkered with those cryofuels, using that. They were going to use that to charge the cryopods that they were going to use, but tinkering with the cryofuel disabled the temperature control that was keeping these inert face huggers in
Face
this
hugger.
um, um, keeping them in stasis, in frozen state. So once they took out certain fuels, that lab not only started to increase in temperature to thaw out the specimen, the embryonic facehuggers, but it also locked that shit down. Right. So this is where um Navarro and what's his name? Navarro and Rain came in to help support. So what they did was realize that they were locked in because they Andy did not have enough security clearance to open this very sensitive place, a lab. Of course, this is where they were experimenting on the facehuggers. This
Higher.
is the most dangerous place. So they needed higher clearance. We also forgot to mention that, in salvaging through Romulus, we see uh, a half torn android,
The
which
most
was
controversial
actually,
part.
yeah, which was actually Rook.
Yeah.
So not only was
Well, our
one
Rook model.
a Rook model,
Our Rook
right?
model.
Yeah. And controversy because one, that actor is dead, right? And
Mm.
then they had to ask the estate for permission, which was allowed. But also, like, there's other androids that they could have used that would have been more apt, right? But either way, um, they realized that that android
What
was
is
working.
your thoughts on it?
I don't
Mm.
mind.
So for
It-
me, it's I'm leaning towards the I don't mind. Like one, yeah, we never know what his thoughts on being used, his image and
yeah.
like this being used after death. But for me, what matters is the family, and if they
Mhm.
get more money in celebrating this guy again, I'm all for it. So I don't mind it. But there are other androids I could use, like Lance Henriksen from Aliens. But
Thi-
I see why they went with it, and I'm okay.
This is
I'm leaning towards
yeah.
okay.
This is the Android in Alien One. So that's what they went for. So I understand that, but I also again, it's not hard to explain away why the next model of androids were the ones used,
The
because again, was like the between Alien and Alien 2. So either way, so I understand both. I don't mind either at all. So um it looked the funny thing is because they're doing deep fake on this Android model, it looked fake, but that worked because this is a fucking Android that is half working. So
mm,
that's fine. But either way, they realized that the Rook model Android in that particular lab was working that particular lab, meaning that Android would get more, would have more clearance. So Rain took out the module from Rook, gave it to Andy to override and use, get additional clearances to be able to open these doors, and has other prime directives as well that we'll discuss in a little bit. But this is a fun, it was a really, really fun and scary uh reboot process. It really looked cool how it was edited.
mm,
Andy just like went praise and then folded,
mm,
right? While it was rebooting. And then of course while rebooting we see Taylor and Bjorn uh freak out about certain things like crawling around in the water because that particular spot was also underwater as well. Um Bjorn was Bjorn, they fought off the initial foray of facehuggers that was thought out in that particular lab while Andy was rebooting. But as Andy woke up, opened the door and left, of course one of the facehuggers was able to um capture or latch onto Navarro. They bring Navarro to the middle lab. They ask Rook on what this is, etc., etc. Rook had mentioned like, hey, the more that you hurt the thing, the more that the facehugger will clamp across
Mm-hmm.
Navarro's neck. You can't you can't really just pry it off or kill it because currently the facehugger is breathing for Navarro. But they did, again, another foreshadowing. They did able to think about like, what if we freeze the tail, you know, while we electrocute the facehugger so that when
They
it,
can't
when
squeeze.
yeah, it can't squeeze. And they did that. They were able to um leave Navarro, so or rescue Navarro, and then um they at that this point is Rook is the one that like discloses what had happened in the station. There's this giant xenomorph on top of the lab that nobody looks up, so nobody saw it. Um so Rook actually tells them like, that's what these species does. Perfect specimen. They implants seeds. And the advice was to not have Navarro there or leave Navarro there because, a seed may have been implanted and more of those things might come out. But Bjorn flees with Navarro to the Corbilin, trapping Andy, Tyler, and Rain in Romulus. But once you get to the Corbilin, the the chest buster comes out the chest of Navarro with Isabella Merced's character being there as a witness. Uh Bjorn also, after locking all the other people in Romulus, had to fight off the chest buster, but also like fell, kind of broke his knee in the cargo hold. So um and then uh after Bjorn regains consciousness, oh sorry, and then there's like a little blackout there, and then Isabella Merced passes out because of the chest, seeing her friend's chest bust open, an alien come out,
Great use
and
of
then
the med thing though.
yeah, the X-ray, right? That
Yeah.
again, the first 5 minutes, all of the tools that they took, right, was there. So um uh once Isabella Merced regains consciousness, he realizes that um a Xeno finds Bjorn wanting to save him. But of course, within that particular instance as well, Bjorn was trying to freeze or kill the xenomorph, but it has grown big enough to be strong enough to fight against all of these things. And then the xenomorph kind of like stabs Bjorn in the eye with its tail, killing it. Um, and then this is also another exposition sense. So Isabella Merced can see that, oh, the blood that comes from the xenomorph is acidic,
Burns.
as Bjorn's like chest and heart, just a little bit of drop in it, like burnt into him, killing him especially. So we go back to the Romulus, which is kind of great because this is the scene where and after all of that happens, because there's no real pilot, the Corbillan just careens into Romulus and Remus, and eventually like just luckily just
Crashes in. Yeah.
crashes into one of the cargo holds where Rain, Tyler, and Andy needs to navigate towards so that they can leave this godforsaken place, etc., etc. But the only way to get to that particular cargo hold was this room that is infested by facehuggers. And then one cool thing that we kind of figure out now is, with Rook's programming in Andy, right? We realize now that Andy has a new primary directive, which it was not told to the kids, but um, his new primary directive now is to get this particular compound that was synthesized from the research from the xenomorph, which was actually synthesized from analyzing what the
The
engineers
blue
have
liquid,
done
yeah.
to create life. So it's like it's black goo, but it's technically another piece of black goo. But Rook calls it Prometheus fire. It's intended to change the genetic structure of humans to make them more perfect, resilient to like much more like xenomorphs, where they can live in space forever. They can easily breed. They are strong. They're resilient to all sorts of different et cetera, et cetera. But like so that Romulus and Remus ship was able to synthesize that, and that's the new primary directive of Andy over protecting Rain. So that was a fun thing too. But in order to get to the Corbillan, they have to navigate a bay with a lot of face huggers. And Rook mentioned that these aliens um hunt through body temperature. So a good way for them to, or also, and Tyler and Rain can figure out, it's like, what if we raise the temperature
Oh, you mean the face
of
huggers? Yeah.
the facehuggers? Yeah. Let's raise the temperature of the room to the same temperature as our bodies so that we'll technically be, if we're quiet, we'll be invisible. So that was the kind of thing. But it's cool. See, that's a nice, I've never seen that suspense trick before, right?
Mm,
Because you can't just be quiet, but you also need to be calm because Rook mentioned, like, hey, when you're nervous, adrenaline kicks in. When adrenaline kicks in, it makes you sweat. It makes you sweat because it
body,
wants to
it's
cool off your body and lower your body temperature, and then you'll be seen. So, essentially, they did that towards the end because Isabella Merced started calling them and seeing them or are asking for help, saying that there's like an alien in the Corbin, et cetera, et cetera. They had to run for their lives. There's a cool little scene where Andy closed the door on both Rain and Taylor. So Taylor will be like Taylor had to slide through and the door closes literally right behind him as close as possible. And then they thought that Andy was leaving them behind, but Andy was saying like, no, I just calculated it perfectly so that none of the facehuggers can come in the room, because that's how Navarro was infected. Like one got through because they weren't quick enough. So this is where, all right, they got the Prometheus fire. Rain and Tyler armed themselves up to start their venture back to the Corbillan. Um, and so this is where we see the cool aim assist way of how these guns work. So basically, the rifle goes around the shoulder, and if you half click on the trigger, it kind of points
I
to
love it.
a
It's
right.
so
So it
gamey,
makes sense,
but it
but
makes sense.
also it makes sense because, like, how would you expect somebody who's never held a gun to survive a lot of these things? So you kind of like help them out a little bit. So that's cool. We have a lot of adventure. There's also there's once they got to close enough to the Corbulan, we of course the xenomorph essentially let Isabella Merced's character get
Go.
to them. Yeah. But also essentially what the xenomorph was trying to do was use Isabella Merced as
Wait.
bait to get all the other people, which Rook knew, or Andy
Andy.
programmed Rook knew. So Andy didn't open the door so that they can all be together quicker. And then we see Isabella Merced's character get picked up by the alien. Tyler breaks down, etc., etc. So, and then essentially they start the final steps of um their trudge uh to the Corbillan. Again, all along this time there was a 30-minute timer because the entire space station is moving towards the belt. So this entire space station was going to be
They'll
destroyed. So they
disintegrate.
needed to leave. All right. Um, while finding a way back to the Corbelan, Rain and Tyler finds Isabella Merced's character somewhere, cocooned. So they realize, or they weren't sure whether this, she was seated yet, but there's kind of like some explanation where sometimes the aliens don't seed the host yet because they might be too weak to carry it to term. So
Mm,
they're making it cocoon first. So this was, I didn't realize that, but I realized that when it was an Easter egg about what had happened to Newt. Like, why was Newt not seated with an alien? It's because like Newt was too tiny still, so they were just gonna cocoon him until they was big enough, and then they'll see it. So
makes sense.
um
Ending of that.
uh So, so once it happens, they save Kay from the cocoon, but at the same time, Tyler is then killed by an alien. So, unfortunately, by Tyler, um, uh, Rain and Kay escapes back to the Corbillan with the Prometheus fire, which is kind of like what Andy went back for while going to the ship. And then when Rain got back to the Corbillan, he didn't want to leave. She didn't want to leave Andy behind because I don't know what happened to Andy, but Andy just shorted out once they got to close enough
She
to this
was.
elevator
I
shaft.
think like he got hit his head or something.
Yeah, got hit by what?
He got hit by the alien and he crashed, or like he fell hard.
Because he was just like shivering. I thought
Mm.
that there was some form of android trap in that area. Either way, so that's what happened. There was a cool setup here where Rook is saying all you guys have to do is turn on autopilot, and Rook, Android Rook, was going to like navigate the plane back to a place where they can get treatment, but also they can analyze the Prometheus fire that they have. Because Kay, or Isabella Marced, was so injured and was so dying, she wasn't going to survive anyway. She took the Prometheus fire. So she put the Prometheus fire in herself, thinking that it would kind of like ideally perfect her, and then make her survive. Right, that was the idea. Um, so we'll see when we come back, because Rain comes back to rescue Andy. There's super cool action sequence where they couldn't fire against the aliens because of the acid blood, and it will tear through the hull, and then they were going to be sucked out into space. But they realized that they could control the gravity, so they turned off the gravity, start killing all the aliens that they can, and then all of these blood is floating in the air, and then they can just like escape through. um, but of course, one more alien was able to escape, follow Andy and Rain through this duct that was going to be their elevator shaft all the way back to the Corbelan. Um, in the end, Andy kind of sacrificed himself, essentially turning on the gravity again in that shaft, so that he can ride the elevator down and crush the alien and let Andy escape. Um, so that's what had happened. They killed the final alien there, but uh, as soon as Rain gets back to the Corbelan, we then realize that now something very, very bad has happened. So this is kind of like the squeamish, super squeamish scene that Fed mentioned that it was gonna be. Like, there's gonna be a scene in the movie that everybody gets like, "Ugh," but it's essentially
But wait, what's
the
your comment on her treating Andy like a brother?
I like it. I mean, because
Even though
technically, I
it's It's a Android.
I love the fact that they established that from the start, right? Like Andy is an android built by my dad to take care of me. We've been together since I was a kid. So that in and of itself is like, yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's like a cool android, a bad android, you imprint on that. So I was so cool with it. Also very impressed on David Johnson's fucking acting, because acting as Andy and then Andy with Rook programming, wildly different. Super cool. What do you think?
I agree. Personally, it's a good thing to talk about. But the way they did it, yeah, it makes sense that she would definitely stick by him, and yeah, he was the star of the show. He stole the show with how different he was and how awesome he was as both.
Yeah, I'm yeah, you're right. I'm really excited on the next. There's gonna be a next for sure. But the end of this movie is like it's pretty fine. It's tough to explain, but it's when you guys watch it, it's gonna be great. But as Rain and Andy prepare to leave toward going towards Ivaga, right? They were gonna put themselves in cryo, etc., etc. um, Kay has been starting to be affected by the injection that he did. So the human in his body started rapidly growing into like a human xenomorph hybrid. So in the movie they called this post movie they call this the offspring. And this offspring was this like white, lanky, weird, contorted human like person with very, very like long limbs, tail like the alien, and then head more human, but a little combination.
I loved
So
it.
the cool, I didn't like, essentially, I didn't like the design. I always hate it when they do a human xenomorph hybrid, right? It's like every movie, there's something like this, but I did appreciate that the offspring, right? This like 7'6" guy is essentially just a dude in a suit.
Yeah,
Right? There's a basketball player named Robert Bobrovsky, right? And they would
practical
just
baby.
they put him in a suit. That's how his body looks like. So it's kind of cool that was it. So the offspring comes out of K and eventually kills K through. I think this is the one that
Kind of not
fed
clear how.
Alvarez. Yeah. Well, she sucked the life out of the mom, much like
How?
as the through the boobs.
Oh,
Right.
is it
So
through the?
in remember in the start of the movie when they were explaining this painting in the Remus, where essentially there was a plague that killed everybody. They kind of like focused in on certain babies suckling on their dead mom's body. Right. So that's kind of
Wow.
like foreshadowing of what had happened of this. Like the offspring unintentionally kills the mother because he just wants to grow. But this offspring grows very, very quickly. But and Andy being injured couldn't help a lot. So it was essentially Rain versus offspring 1v1 using the cargo bay where they hold the minerals, the ores, the things that they've mined as a way to kind of like draw the offspring down to the cargo bay, use the egg of the cargo bay and its blood as a catalyst to tear a little hole in the hull, and then eventually, of course, a lot of suspense, thrillers, grabbing, but eventually that is the way that Rain manages to eject the creature into the rings, which called the Jackson's rings. Um, so after that had happened, Rain both places herself and Andy into the cryo chamber, hoping to get to Ivaga, a 9-year trip before, and then she does a little log before she goes into stasis herself. The only other thing here, the only reason why I think this is gonna have a sequel and they're not gonna get into Vaga is because like as they trudge, you see the engine sputter around, right? So,
They're gonna crash land
like
somewhere.
either crash land somewhere or
And there's
another
also the
ship.
issue of uh Andy not being allowed
Yeah,
in
in
that place.
Nivaga, there's no androids in Nivaga, so that's the other thing too. But maybe they might crash land into another place. They might be picked up by somebody else, but it is gonna be fun. So that is Romulus. Final thoughts and your rating, Chewbacca.
Oh, rating. I'll go with a 9. I was leaning towards high 8, but I really enjoyed it. So let's go with a 9. I loved it. All the practical effects, the graphic, the casting was great. Uh, um, what else? The scary scenes were great. I can't wait for Bella to watch it, and uh, love that he picked right with Fede, and I hope
Yeah.
they keep going.
No, this is a 9 for me as well. This is um just the fact that it is super self-contained.
Mm-hmm.
It feels simple but fresh, right? You don't have to this is an
Yeah.
alien movie. You don't have to put so much philosophy in it. Put a little bit of corporate greed in there, put a little bit of like racism in there because like again there's like a huge part of Bjorn not liking androids, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
androids killed his parents, etc., right? Put a little bit of these young stalwarts trying to like Oliver twist their way to life, like leave this hellhole and then um uh go to a better place. So yeah, it's good, but in the end, they establish the rules. They fight against some monsters. There's a big monster in the end, and that's it. So I really, really enjoyed it. 2 hours, very, very well spent. I hope that they don't take too long in doing the
The
next
sequel.
movie. So
Oh, I
yeah,
wonder
so
how long it took them. This one doesn't seem too long,
hmm,
so hopefully,
let's see. Well, that's the thing. That's the good thing about not giving somebody a Ridley Scott. Like you don't need a giant monumental. It's like hey, give
yeah,
somebody. It's like have fun with aliens. So yeah, that might be cool too. What if the cryostasis is actually 500 years? They never wake up, and then Ripley picks them up in the end. So we'll never know. So it's gonna be fun.
yeah.
Um, all right. Okay, that's it for our discussion of Alien Romulus. Nines across the board. Watch it if you can. Um, uh, I was lucky enough to get one of those canisters with the facehugger on them. So that's gonna be a little nice figurine here in my apartment. With that, we will see you next week on discussing a different movie or TV series. But on behalf of Chubox, thank you very much.
Bye
See you.
bye.